This week on the show, we have the ultramarathon runner, Dean Karnazes. This guy is one of the OGs when it comes to ultramarathon running. In fact, one time he ran 50 marathons in 50 different states in the US in 50 days. And one time he ran 350 miles straight for 80 hours without sleeping. This guy just doesn't stop running. In fact, he's inspired me so much, I think I'm gonna run this entire time. But I had an amazing time talking with Dean in my studio. He's just written a book about his travel back to his homeland because his ancestors are all from Greece. And what he did is he actually retraced the run from Athens to Sparta that was made 2,500 years ago to warn that the Persians were invading. Yes, just like the movie 300, he reenacted it and he lived on a diet of figs and dried meats just like those people would have done at the time. This guy is crazy and OG, and he completed this race in under 36 hours, which is 153 miles, which is the same or less time that was done by the original Greek. Look, Dean's a super cool guy. He's also a mover. He told me on any given day, he's doing burpees, he's doing pull-ups, he's doing all sorts of crazy stuff. He's 50-some years old, looks like he's 35, and he believes there's no happiness without struggle. And most of us are just too comfortable in our lives. He turned 30 after not being active his entire life, had a shot of tequila, and then ran 30 miles and started this crazy adventure. And he's a really inspirational guy. So I love my time with Dean. It's one of my favorite episodes of London Real. Get running. He encourages all of us to go out there and run a marathon. Go ahead and book it, do a charity, post it on your social media. That way you'll be forced to do it. And Dean, thanks so much for getting me out, getting me running down the street here in Shoreditch. I really appreciate it. And most of you are gonna be running over to the London Real Academy because that's where all the fun stuff happens. That's where you can book tickets for our super focus groups in London. And of course, you can get involved for our upcoming Life Accelerator. It's 6 weeks with me and the team where we teach you all the lessons I've learned from the great people at London Real that took me from a banker into a broadcaster. I talk about my mindset, my mindfulness. I teach you about nutrition, movement habits, relationships, and how to be successful for the next 12 months. The last course that took this, 3 of them got London Real tattoos because it had such a huge effect. And this group from before, they're like a family. They like hang out together, they help each other. So if you want to be a part of that, you can click on the link below, jump in there. And in the meantime, I'm gonna leave you with Dean Karnazes. This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is ultramarathon runner Dean Karnazes, whose Time magazine named as one of the top 100 most influential people in the world, and Men's Fitness called one of the fittest men on the planet. You've run 50 marathons in all 50 states in 50 consecutive days. You run the South Pole without snowshoes, and you once ran 350 miles straight in 80 hours without sleep. You are also a best-selling author and have recently released to the UK The Road to Sparta, which details how you recreated the infamous marathon from Athens to Sparta nearly 2,500 years ago, and your second book, Ultramarathon Man, Confessions of an All-Night Runner. Dean, welcome to London Real.
I'm exhausted just listening to the introduction. Yeah, thanks for having me on. Yeah.
You know, you're born in America, your family's from Greece, you're in London now, which is kind of in the middle. What does it feel like to be here? Is it kind of between those two worlds? Or, what is it like being here?
Well, one of the individuals I work with on the book is Professor Paul Cartledge, who's one of the foremost authorities on ancient Greek culture, and he's from Cambridge. So I feel like there's a very close connection with Britain because some of the modern historians that captured ancient Greece are from Britain, Cambridge specifically. So I feel somewhat of a connection, and I've got a lot of fans in the UK. I love London. I'm always here for like 3 days and I'm out of here, so it's always too quick, but it's been good, yeah.
And you're going to run the marathon on Sunday?
Yeah.
You are, okay.
Yeah. I mean, here's how my life rolls. So, the last 4 weekends I've run marathons. On Monday, so a couple days ago, I ran the Boston Marathon, hopped on a flight, no sleep, flew to London, and it's just been nonstop since. Run the marathon Sunday, and then I'm off to Portugal for another marathon.
Wow. And you said you were here 4 years ago, and this time it feels like an order of magnitude bigger in the response that people have to you, like fan base and stuff like that. First of all, what does it feel like to be you and walk around like the Excel Center for these expos? And why do you think, you got so much love here?
Walking in my shoes sometimes is surreal. I mean, even just coming through the airport. So I'm walking, to collect my luggage, and, 2 guys are walking toward me. One guy's, oh, holy shit, it's Dean Karnazes. Like, what? I can't believe, what are you doing in London? I mean, it's Dean Karnazes, and his buddy's looking at him like, who is this guy? So some people know me, other people don't, and that's kind of how my life is. I think my stories are very personal, and I think every runner can relate to suffering and pain, no matter if it's trying to run your first half marathon or trying to run your first 100-mile race. I think there's something that is very personal in that, and I think that's why I have such a, not just a loyal fan base, but and empathetic. We feel the same way. We've shared the same miseries.
When I look back at the things you've done, when you just go on YouTube, you see you talking to 60 Minutes 10 years ago, on the Letterman show, on talking to Conan O'Brien. There's a term that some of the gang members use in LA. It's called OG, and it means like a pioneer, an original gangster. And when it comes to ultramarathon, you're that guy. And in the last 5 or 10 years, the sport has exploded. But you were the one that was doing it just back in the day. And I was wondering what kind of perspective you have now compared to back then, and seeing kind of this sport evolve. Back when you were doing it, everyone probably just thought it was crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I used to show up at the start of a race and there'd be like 25 guys there. Now there's waiting lists, or the race sells out in, 15 minutes. So it's grown very popular. It's become more like the marathon. So if you've watched the marathon over the past 20 years, the average race times have increased a whole lot. So it used to be a bunch of very elite white guys running marathons. Boston Marathon, which I just ran, it's 40% women. London Marathon, I think, is 60% women. The average finish time is an hour slower over the past decade. So more everyday athletes are getting into these sort of challenges. I think people seek out these sort of extreme challenges. For someone, a marathon is very extreme because life is so ordinary. And when you're out suffering and struggling, it's a unique experience that takes you out of your everyday comfort zone. Yeah.
It's almost like the movie Fight Club, right?
I'm telling you, it is. There's so many similarities. That could be just running a marathon, or the only thing with running a marathon or an ultra, it's just you against you. So you're really doing battle with yourself versus an opponent.
Right, which is in fact the toughest opponent.
Absolutely.
It can never be someone else's fault. I guess in the movie Fight Club, this guy built up this beautiful kind of pampered life, which we all strive for in this world, and then he realized he had no connection with reality, so he would go down in there and go to these fights. You're saying it's kind of similar with people thrusting themselves into this huge long race. They're going to go into some pain, but it's real, right?
It's very real. And I mean, that's kind of what got me into the sport, is the same thing. I was bored with my life. I mean, I had a cush corporate job, fat paycheck, stock options, company car, business degree, an MBA, and I was miserable. I mean, I just thought, this kind of sucks. Like, everything's so comfortable, everything's so easy. Like, there's no struggle, there's no real hardship. And so I walked out of a bar on my 30th birthday in San Francisco and decided I was going to run 30 miles that night. I'm just like, fuck it, I'm going to run to Half Moon Bay. And I was drunk, and it was midnight, and I had some of these jockey underwear on that were silk. I pulled off my pants and just started running south, and just ran away from my old life. Yeah. Wow.
A lot of people would do that, and then they would stop after a mile. But you kept going as the tequila wore off.
It took about 15 miles. Like, halfway there, I started sobering up. I'm like, what the hell am I doing? This is ridiculous. But it's something about it felt right. Like, this is ridiculous, and there's misery, but there's actually kind of some magic in that misery. So I kept going. I ran straight through the night, 30 miles that night, and decided at that point I was going to become a runner. Screw being a business guy, I'm going to become a runner. I didn't know how I was going to make a go of it. It's not dissimilar to what you did. I mean, you just kind of figure it out as you go.
Right. And you literally ran away from that old life.
Yeah.
That's crazy. And before that, it had been 15 years since you ran. You had a bug for it in high school, right? With a certain coach.
Yeah.
And again, there you went over the top, right? Some kids were doing 10 laps. You did a whole marathon when you were a teenager, right? And blew out the charity.
Yeah, well, I mean, there was a fundraiser, and most people, the people are pledging $1 a lap, and it was around a high school track, so it's a quarter mile, and some people were able to run 10 laps, and they're getting $10 from each donor. I ran 105 laps. Never forget knocking on my neighbor's door, like, you owe me $105. Like, what? Yeah.
Did they pay?
I think, yeah. My cousin Vinny would break their legs if they didn't.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you had a break, but you walked away from the running thing for 15 years. That's rare, right?
It's not uncommon for runners to take a break, but typically there's no restart. Or the restart is very casual. Like they might have said, I ran when I was a kid, now I'm overweight, I'm going to start jogging, jog around Hyde Park. It's not common for someone to start running more than they ran in a previous life.
Okay. So you turned 30, you ran that night, you walked away from this life. So many people dream of doing that, but they just can't, right? Because it's too comfortable. What did you do from there? Did you know you were going to be an ultra guy?
No, I had no idea. I mean, I knew I liked running long distances. Just from my business background, I also knew that I got a mortgage to pay. I got a daughter on the way, so I got a mouth to feed. No one's going to give me health care anymore. I got to buy health care insurance. And so I thought, when you win a 100-mile race, what do you get? A belt buckle. Because there used to be horse races, and the first guy who ran one got to the finish, like, this guy ran 100 miles, what do we give him? And it was a horse race, so they gave him a belt like a rodeo buckle. And that just became the lore of it. So that's what you get if you run 100 miles. So I figured there's got to be another way besides, just running these races. I got to piece it together if I'm going to make a go of it. Yeah.
And so you figured out the business model behind it.
Yeah, figured it out. Stubbed my toe a lot of times along the way, literally and figuratively. So yeah, I learned a lot of great lessons. But I think, in my first book, Ultramarathon Man, I write about my story, and I think that people enjoy that book because it kind of gives them permission to live their dream. They might be stuck in a job or in a rut they don't like, and they read about this guy who was in the same place and all of a sudden said, screw it, I'm going to change things, and had the courage to do it, and it became better. So I think when people read that, it empowers them to try themselves. Yeah.
Why long distances? Why were you attracted to those things as opposed to just sticking with the marathons?
I just like the experience of being out in the mountain. Like most of the ultramarathons are in the mountains, and they're 24 hours. So I like the experience of being in nature, raw and real, watching the sunrise, watching the day progress, watching the sunset, running straight through the night. I mean, how many times do people stay up all night, let alone running in the middle of the wilderness for 24 hours straight? It was just fascinating to me, and there was something that drew me into it. Yeah.
What's it like to run all night? Like, what would I be surprised to learn about running all night? Is it hard to see? Do you actually not fall asleep? Do you fall asleep? You've actually fallen asleep while you're running before.
Yeah, I mean, everything you just said happens to you. And that's the thing. Everything you can expect and not anticipate will happen to you. So, I have fallen asleep while I've been running. And I didn't fall over. I just kept sleep running. I have hallucinated. I have had my headlamps go out and running in the dark, stumbling around. I have got lost. I have had animal encounters, bear encounters, snake encounters. So these things happen to you, and I don't know. It's the grand adventure of it. I'm really drawn to it.
I think you did an interview with our friend Joe DeSena, Spartan Race.
Yeah.
I think you said the first 50 miles is about your body. The next 50 miles is about your mind. Well, what does that mean?
Well, there's a quote with this Western States 100-mile endurance run. They say that you run the first 50 miles with your legs and the next 50 miles with your mind. And I think that running is more of a mental challenge than a physical one, especially those greater distances, because at a point your body is destroyed. And you have to override that feeling that you want to stop, that all systems are saying you're done, you can't keep going. And you have to have the discipline and the mental power to say, I'm going to keep going. I'm going to have the resolve. And you learn a lot about yourself when you do this. It tests you in ways you haven't been tested before. And to me, that's part of growing, right? Is to try new things, take on new things, fail. I mean, I've certainly failed, learned a lot from my failures, and to keep pushing the distances. I mean, from 100 miles, I went to, can I run a 135-mile race across Death Valley, in the middle of summer? Did that. There's this 200-mile relay race, 12-person relay race. Can I just enter as one guy? Ran 200 miles nonstop. So you can keep expanding, keep learning, and never stop exploring. And that's why I like the ultra distances.
Talk to me about Death Valley. I mean, I think I saw there was a 60 Minutes piece on that, maybe when you ran it later. How hot is it? What are those conditions like? And again, is it just the craziest people coming up with the craziest ideas? Is that how this stuff happens?
Yeah, I mean, well, the race is called the Badwater Ultramarathon. It's called the world's toughest foot race, and it's a 135-mile continuous race across Death Valley in the middle of summer. So that tells a bit of the story. When it's 130 degrees, I can say these numbers. When you're standing in that heat, it's a totally different reality. It does crazy things to you. I mean, that is really, really extreme. And to think about running in that, I mean, I ran Boston Marathon on Monday. It got up to about 77 or 78, and people were freaking out. And people were ending up in the hospital with dehydration about this heat. And I'm thinking, add 60 degrees to that, and then go on, and try to run. So it's a really extreme race. And I think that, someone ran 100 miles and never thought that would be possible. I mean, think about it. When I first heard of a human running 100 miles nonstop, I thought, there's no way, a human being, that's impossible, right? And someone did it. So I think that at that point, it's, we got to the moon, can we get to Mars? We'll get to Mars one day. Can we go beyond our solar system? How far can you go? So I think that once something's achieved, it just sets the bar a little bit higher, for others.
What's it like going through Death Valley? I hear you have to run on the white lines because otherwise your shoes will melt. Because something like that, the pavement is up near 200 degrees.
It's up near 200 degrees, yeah. You're good. You do your research. Yeah. He's good, people. He's really...
But you said, you can't conceive of that heat, right?
No,
it's a number.
You stay on the white line because white reflects some of the heat. So you don't want your shoes to melt. And the tarmac, the asphalt, is 200 degrees. Yeah.
That's pretty crazy.
Well, and that's only half it. So there's climbing. You got to climb out of Death Valley. You got to end up on the side of Mount Whitney, which is the highest point in the contiguous U.S. There's a savage headwind, and this headwind will dry you out. Your eyeballs get dehydrated. Your sinuses, your throat is scratchy. There's sandstorms. The first year I did it, the soft palate of my mouth, so the upper top of my mouth, I got third-degree burns on there because I was panting as I was running. And the reflection, the UV reflection, because I had a hat on, I'm covered up, but the UV reflection off the asphalt up into the upper of my mouth got sunburned. I mean, this race will do horrible things to you. Yeah. And
you can't foresee that stuff. So you go in and you just have to deal with all of these new pain points.
Yeah, well, it's like Rocky. I just thought of an analogy. think about Rocky getting the shit beat out of him by Apollo, right? It's happening to you. You're just like, can I get back up? Like, can I keep going? And you're just getting the crap beat out of you. Yeah, and to me, I don't know, I kind of thrive on it, yeah.
Do you get close there to tapping out, to saying I'm done? Because you can stop whenever you want.
Well, the first year I tried the Badwater Ultramarathon, I tapped out involuntarily. I passed out on the side of the road, and my crew found me lying in the dirt, and they put me in a car and drove me away, so, yeah.
It will get you at some point. It can, if you're not prepared.
It can.
You lost your vehicle and you had no prep, and that's probably why.
Yeah.
You came back smarter the next time, right?
Yeah, well, I've been in probably a couple hundred ultramarathons, and I've, DNF, did not finish, and maybe a handful. So it's very rare. Only when I feel like I'm doing sort of injury to my body, like maybe a permanent injury, do I really pull out of a race. Otherwise, it's just keep going, yeah.
Pain, what does that word mean to you? And what should that word mean to other humans, in your opinion?
I've shifted my paradigm on pain, so I don't try to avoid pain anymore. In fact, even when I run the London Marathon on Sunday, it's going to hurt. There's going to be a point where it's going to be painful. And I'm looking forward to it. Not in a masochistic sort of way, like, okay, can I be the master of my mind? can I get through this pain? Because it's all perception. Pain's perception. And can I push through it? And I kind of thrive on that. Yeah, it's a challenge. I think pain is a challenge to overcome like any other challenge.
Do you think it's just an indicator, and that these days we all run away from the pain, right? Safety, we protect our kids, they can't, And do you think it's just an information input as opposed to a digital decision saying, stop this? Do you think we need to get more
I think it's the former entirely. I mean, watch the ads on television, half of them for pain medications. Oh, do you have pain in your joints? Does your back hurt? This and that. Like, come on. Do some burpees or some sit-ups if your back hurts. I mean, yeah.
When you're running, does everything have pain inputs, all of your body, ankles and knees?
There's been points where the tip of my nose radiates pain. Every cell in my body is screaming. My ears are radiating pain. Just stop. Yeah, yeah.
You once said that we're our happiest when we're struggling. And in theory, that sounds right,
Yeah.
But when you're in the middle of it, most people, they don't want to struggle anymore. I mean, I think you've grown with this relationship you have now with pain, but even I know that's true. But when I'm in the thick of the shit, I'm like, man, I really want this to stop.
Yeah.
I mean, is that like some Zen Buddhist next level stuff when you can be in there with the pain and think, wait a second, this is actually the good times right now? This is going to make me feel great? How can you get that point across to most normal people?
I've come up against that scenario you just described so often that I've kind of intellectualized it and said, okay, how are you going to get beyond this? You've been here before. What are you going to do? Where does your mind go? What are you going to do to keep going? And what I've learned is that instead of trying to chant a mantra or put your head somewhere else, instead, just be in the moment of time, be in the present instant, be in the here and now. Don't think about anything. Don't think about how much further you've got to go. Don't reflect on the past. Just think about being your very best, literally in that instant of time, and that next instant of time, and that next instant of time. So maybe it is kind of a Zen-like state you put your mind in.
Almost kind of like the power of now. I guess a marathon will make you present.
It forces you. Well, I mean, running the London Marathon or Boston Marathon is a very different experience than running 100 miles through the mountains. I mean, there's, millions, thousands, hundreds of thousands of fans cheering for you. Nowadays, running has become very social. So, I mean, when I ran Boston Marathon, I probably took 100 photos with people. People run up to you and want a picture. As you're running a freaking marathon.
During the marathon, other runners.
Yeah, I'm surrounded by people the entire time, talking during the marathon. So a marathon is no longer that kind of solo you against you experience that it once was. So it's changed a lot in that way.
Okay.
Yeah. But the ultramarathon is still, when you're out in the mountains by yourself for 5 or 6 hours, it's very different.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think you once said that a marathon is really about salvation and opportunity and not about running. For people that are watching, maybe some of these people are actually going to do the London Marathon, maybe for the first time, maybe they're shooting for a 4-hour finish and they're going to be happy. What do you mean by that? As opposed to them thinking, man, I just want to get through this and get to the end and have a pint.
Yeah.
Where can they find the salvation?
I will tell these people that are running their first marathon, and if you haven't run a marathon, sign up for one. You got to train, but sign up for one, because at the finish of 26.2 miles or 42 kilometers, you'll be a different person than that person that was standing at the start. You will learn so much about yourself along the way, and that to me is salvation. You've broken through limitations, perceived limitations. You've learned that all limitations are self-constructed. You've done something that you thought might have been impossible. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people watching this are saying, oh, that's great for you to say, Dean, you've run hundreds of marathons. I could never run a marathon. I mean, look at me. I don't think that's true. And if you run a marathon, it'll teach you that, and it changes your life forever. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Getting me excited. So sign up, and on top of that, post it all over your social media, and so you've got this social reason not to back out.
Yep.
Throw a charity up.
Exactly.
Right? So then you'll feel really bad.
Yeah. Then the pressure's on. You're doing it for something bigger than yourself, and there's no way out. You can't fake an injury. You can't say, because every person you tell, oh, my knee hurts, they're going to say, well, I gave you all this money, and anyway, that's my recipe for getting through one.
Make it happen. What was Boston like? I went to school in Boston, and when I heard about the tragedy at the previous marathon, it was hard to imagine that was happening where I went to school. What was the feeling like being there this year? It's been a couple of years after, but still, what was the feeling like, and was it important that you run it because of what happened there with the tragedy and the bombing?
Yeah, so I was there in 2013. I had finished the race, so I'd already finished, and I was just walking back to my hotel. So I stood around in my Mylar blanket, cheered on a lot of runners. I thought, okay, I'm getting a little cold, let's walk back to the hotel, which is right by the finish. And as I was walking down the street, I heard this, and I thought, wow, that was really loud. And I thought, wow, and then I heard another, and I thought, it's Patriots Day in Boston, so I thought maybe they're shooting a cannon, maybe it's 3 o'clock, where's that third chime? And it was like, it wasn't close to 3, it was like 2:47. And I thought, what was that noise? And then someone comes running up the street, there's terrorists, they're bombing. And when you say that in a crowd of 100,000 people, it was pandemonium. I mean, it was chaos like I've never seen before. It was terrifying. It was really terrifying. And it scared me. I mean, when you hear something like that, it owns you. I mean, it shakes your body. And I thought, I got to sign up right now and go back in 2014. And I did. So, and I'm going to run Boston continuously. I'm not going to let anything like that stop me. And I think that the spirit along the course now is stronger after that bombing. And the amount of fans at the finish line, it didn't scare people off. It's doubled the amount of fans. Yeah.
It's a proper Americanism rally that way. Did it piss you off that these people decided to mess with your sport and to do something like that at a finish line of something that you hold sacred? Like you said, everyone should do a marathon. You're trying to push people to push their limits, and now people are just ruining something that's potentially so beautiful.
I think it's cut both ways. I think that unfortunately, it shows the vulnerability of trying to police a marathon. I mean, it's like, think about the Super Bowl over 26 miles. I mean, how do you possibly protect every inch of that course? It's almost inconceivable. So the amount of security now and the cost of producing a marathon is astronomical. On the other side, I think that it's made people stronger. Yeah, hardship makes people stronger, and there's that kind of shared suffering brings people together. Yeah.
Yeah, I was in New York City for 9/11, and I was actually in London for the bombings here, and a few years later, in '05. I thought I was going to hit everything, and I was impressed at both times by the resilience of the people.
Yeah.
And, the Americans in New York City and how they just rallied and came together. And, the Brits taught me an amazing thing. Like, literally the next day, it was like back to work.
Yeah.
And I realized that they'd done this before. In 1940, they had been bombed, probably 1,000, 2,000, 10,000x.
Yeah.
And yet they got on with it. The motto, keep calm and carry on.
Yeah.
And they really impressed me as far as that was their way of fighting back, was just to carry on. And it was a beautiful thing to see.
Well, I think, the human, especially the male, needs to fight. I mean, we know that. I've been a teenage kid. I mean, you have a fight in you. And how do you express that? Unfortunately, there are people that express it in what we've seen. They're in sort of terrorism, which is a bad manifestation. There's the Fight Club mentality where you just, you get into kickboxing or whatever. And then there's the marathon. It's the same damn thing. You're fighting against yourself. You're getting that fight out of you. But I think if people were running marathons instead of, planting bombs, we'd be a lot better. So that's, I'm kind of that's my manifesto for getting out there and running marathons. Yeah.
What's the culture like in some of these ultra marathoners? I talked to Joe DeSane, and he was talking about these crazy races and the death races and all those things. But he said, Brian, man, there are some quirky people in there that do this kind of thing. What are your peers like when you guys hang out afterwards and have a drink? Like, what are they like?
There are some quirky people.
You seem pretty normal, Pete.
Well, that's the thing. I think most ultra marathoners, most extreme athletes could pass for normal. Like, they could walk down the street and you say, wow, that guy looks pretty damn fit, but you'd never think they're doing incredibly weird things. I think that it's with ultra marathoning more so than even like the Spartan races. I've done Spartan races, and there is kind of a funky set to some of them. They're pretty different kind of crowds, some of them. But I think mostly really good people, really enthusiastic, really energetic. Yeah, maybe a little extreme. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I asked a question earlier, I'm going to go back to it now. You've seen this sport evolve for many, many years now. I mean, you've been doing this for 30-some years, right?
Yeah, 25 years, yeah.
I mean, what have you seen? What's your take on it? Because I don't know anybody that's been in it and to the extreme that you are, other than you. And what do you see now? What's the state of ultramarathoning now versus where it was, and where do you think it's going?
So it's become much more democratic in that there's a much broader base of everyday athletes, if you will. I wouldn't say everyday athletes, but sub-elite athletes. So there's more people running ultramarathons that never thought they could go that far. People that have real jobs. Before it used to be kind of just people that were living on the fringe. You couldn't have a real job because you couldn't train as much as you needed, and this and that. But now there's professionals doing it. The other trend, so that's been one major trend, and the growth has been, incredible. It's still a very small subset of running, ultramarathoning, but it's a growing subset. The other trend is that at the distance, like a 50 kilometer, which is 31 miles, and even a 50-mile race, a lot of elite marathoners, like Olympic qualifying marathoners, kids, I say kids in their, early 20s, are running ultras now, and they're smashing course records. I mean, almost every ultra last year, if you look, there was a new course record set by some person you've never heard of before. It's not one guy who's like dominant, winning every race. There's elite marathoners that are saying, wow, this ultra thing's kind of fun, I'm going to try it, and they're smashing records. So that's the other trend.
Okay, so bringing new heights, pushing that sport even further. Do these guys use ultras to train for marathons and maybe get better? And
I think they use marathons to train for ultras, yeah. But I mean, these guys race. Like, still most of the ultramarathoners are not in it to race. I mean, they're in it for the experience, especially when you get out to 100 miles. I mean, someone's going to win, and they might know who the winner is, but they're just more, can I make it? Can I get to the finish line? That success is defined in completing the race. So it's a different mindset completely, where these elite guys, they're like marathoners, man. They're looking at their split times. They're really racing against each other. It's a very different reality for them than someone in mid-pack.
Okay, and you're happy with that? You're okay with that?
I think both of those are good. Both those trends are good. Both more mid-packers and more elites. I think they're both good things for the sport.
Okay. Talk to me about the book, The Road to Sparta. Look, it's a fascinating read. You're a damn good writer.
Well, thank you.
I mean,
I was an English teacher, so.
Well, I mean, like you said, people in the airport are coming up to you and they're like, feel a connection with you. But this is a personal book. You're talking about your grandfather to start off, this whole immigrant story. I'm fascinated with this immigrant mind, people that come into a situation where they have no choice but to stay. Yeah. Your grandfather had no choice, right? He was there, barely spoke English, changed his name, and made a life for himself. He couldn't go back to Greece when he got to LA. Talk to me about your family, what you learned about him, this whole book, this race. I mean, there's a lot going on here.
Well, I mean, I'm 100% Greek. So, my ancestry is Greek, and I've always heard about my family coming from the same village as Phidippides, however you want to say his name, the original Greek marathoner. So I thought, I got to go to this village. And by God, everyone looks like me. I'm like looking at these people. This is weird. And a lot of them are not athletes. I mean, there's a lot of them are goat herders and farmers, and we all kind of look alike. And they all have incredible bodies. I mean, they don't train and work out in a gym, but their bodies are amazing. And that was really startling to see that so little in some areas of Greece has changed. The other thing is, doing all the history of Greece and the Greek culture was fascinating to me. Learning about the birth of democracy, how some of these principles have percolated through time and are still relevant 2,500 years later. So it was beyond just a running book, if you will. It was much more of a deeper dive, a deeper study.
Now, one half of your family comes from our Spartans.
Yeah.
And can you explain to me the difference between the Athenians and the Spartans and kind of what you took from all this, and then maybe go a little bit deeper and talk to me about this marathon,
Well, I mean, the city-states of Greece, Athens and Sparta, were kind of like California and New York or something. I mean, if you go to these different cities or different states, you'll notice that people are different. A New Yorker is very different than a Californian, and the Spartans were very different than the Athenians. Athenians were more intellectual, obviously. They were more into ascendancy through the mind, where the Spartans were into ascendancy through the body. So if you've seen 300, I mean, who's the most badass fighting force in Greece? I mean, this is Sparta. This is Leonidas. And so the culture, they were very, very different. Sparta became irrelevant because of that. Sparta almost became like North Korea now. I mean, not as weird as North Korea, but they became a military state that kind of became outdated, if you will. And I always, I tell Joe, go to Sparta. I mean, he started something that people in Greece don't even know about. I go to Greece and I tell these people there's a Spartan race it's global now, and there's people that want to be like Spartans, and they don't get it. And I tell Joe, you got to go to Sparta. But I think if he used to go to Sparta, he'd be disappointed because Sparta is not like what it was 2,500 years ago. It's a very different place now. But in the main square of Sparta, there still is this towering bronze statue of King Leonidas. And this Spartathlon race is a 153-mile foot race from Athens to Sparta. And you've got to complete this in sub 36 hours or else you get cut out of the race. It's the most elite athletes from around the world that attempt this race, and typically only about a third of them finish. And you finish this race unlike any race in the world, in that most races, when you get to a finish line, there's a finish line, right? Well, you get to Sparta and there's no finish line. What you do is you run up to the statue of King Leonidas and you touch his bronze feet. And they stop the clock when you touch his feet. And it melts you. Every runner I saw who made it would just break down crying. I mean, it's such an emotional moment. So I got to feel that sensation and live it, yeah.
Wow, and that whole point of that run was because there was a messenger that went both ways, right? To kind of ask the Spartans to help the Athenians fight the Persians? Is that what was going on there?
Yeah, so in 490 BC, the Persians invaded Greece outside of Athens in a place called Marathon. Incidentally, Marathon means field of fennel, because wild fennel grows in Greece all over, and where the Persians landed, it's a big coastal plain filled with wild fennel. So that's what marathon actually, most people think marathon means a run, of 26.2 miles. It actually means field of fennel. But when the Persians landed, they had fighting force of about 50,000 men. The Athenians had 10,000, and they said, we need help, we need reinforcements. Phidippides, who is a hemerodromi, which meant a day-long runner, here's a professional foot messenger. They said, run to Sparta, recruit the Spartans. And that's what he did. He ran 153 miles to Sparta to ask the Spartans to come back and help battle the Persians.
Okay. Now, how did Marathon end up being 26.2?
Well, it's a convoluted story. You got to read the book.
Okay,
right. He got to Sparta, and the Spartans said, "Yep, we're coming. We don't want Greece to fall. We're your brothers." The problem is the moon is not full, and our religion forbids us for leaving for battle until the moon is full, and the moon wouldn't be full for 6 days. So now Phidippides is there thinking, well, the Spartans are coming, but they're delayed by 6 days. I've got all my men. And think about the pressure on this guy. I mean, he's fighting he's running to save Athens, his family, his father, his mother. They think he might have had children. He knows that the Persians will rape his wife, they'll castrate his son and make him a slave, they'll turn his daughter into a sex slave. That's the pressure this guy's running under. So he decides, I got to go back and tell my countrymen, my Athenians, that the Spartans are delayed by 6 days. So he turns around and runs back to the battlefield of Marathon. So now he's run 153 miles round trip. The final marathon killed him, which after the Athenians somehow defeated the Persians, he ran from the battlefield to the Acropolis and proclaimed Nike, Nike, or Nike, Nike, which means victory, victory, we are victorious. And then he fell dead. But it was further than just a marathon that killed him. Yeah.
That's real talk right there.
Yeah.
And what did you learn about your Greek roots by doing this? And I know you tried to survive on what he would have eaten and drank, right? Figs, and you were really trying to take it back to proper old school when you did this race.
Mm-hmm. You're right. I ate just the foods he would have had access to. So when these hemerodromi ran, they would carry satchels with food, but they would forage a lot as well. So they'd pick figs, olives, and cured meat. It's like a beef jerky. So I wanted to see if I could tackle the Spartathlon using only these ancient foods, and that's what I did. Yeah.
There you go.
Not so well.
Okay. You missed your gel packs and things like that, which are...
Well, yeah, I had some oversights as well. I'd go out for 6 or 8 hour training runs eating figs. It was fine. I'd never eaten figs for 24 hours nonstop, and figs do things to your stomach, right? That's why you eat figs. So I had some GI problems. Okay. Yeah, the figs are great on the way in, but I'll leave it at that.
Did you ever think you wouldn't finish in 36 hours?
I thought I was not going to finish, yeah. But this race was very personal to me, so I got it. I made the commitment at a point when it hurt so bad. Look, you're either going to get to the finish line or they're taking you out of here on an ambulance. That was my commitment. Like, you're not going to stop until you fall over. That's a pretty big commitment. I mean, think about it. You're committing to, I'm either going to pass out or worse, or I'm going to make it to the finish line. And I went through hell to get there, yeah. But I think that makes the book interesting. I mean, if it was a good race, it'd be a standard race report. Yeah, I did this, and you know, top 10, check that off. That's not what happened at all. That's what I wanted to happen, and that's not what happened. So I think it makes it more interesting that I struggled.
What was it like to be on the ground in Greece, and you know, the terrain, to be around the people? What were some of your observations?
You know, it's hard for people to relate to this because there's very few people that have a lifestyle like me. But in Greece, I'm somewhat of a celebrity, and I would be running, and I'd come into these aid stations, like checkpoints, you know, at 75 miles, where I'm destroyed, and all I want to do is, you know, sit in a chair, have some food, kind of massage my legs, you know, kind of regroup, and I'll get there, and there's 100 people waiting for me with books to sign. They want to take pictures. So I'd come to these checkpoints, and all of a sudden I'm just mobbed with people in the middle of this race. There was no peace, and it was a very interesting experience, yeah.
What do you do there? Do you sign away, or do you just got to go? Got to keep moving?
You know, I mean, the Greeks are very forceful people. I mean, I tried to keep moving as best I could, but I mean, you don't just keep moving. When your yaya's there, and your thea, which, you know, your grandma, your aunt, which all the old women say they're your thea, which means they're your aunt, they all want pictures. And these women are forceful. I mean, you know, if I was sitting here like this, they'd just come sit on my lap. You know, it's Greece. So I just did my best, but it was challenging, yeah.
You were there for the economic crisis, so you got to see what happened. I think it probably got worse after you left, and you mentioned that in the foreword of the book.
Yeah.
What did you learn about Greece as a political entity, where it's going from here? It's obviously taken the brunt of all these issues in the EU, and you could probably go up and back and forward on why. But as a humanitarian, as a Greek, and as an outside observer, what do you see, and what's the future there?
I see people desperate, and I see a bright future, which you might think, if they're desperate, how do you see a bright future? The Greek resolve is stronger than I've ever seen it. And I think this economic crisis they've gone through will ultimately help them. You know, being a member of EU has obligations. You got to play like a big boy, and they were not playing like a big boy, and now they're paying the price. And I think they get it. I think that they had to go through this to kind of cleanse themselves of that old way of thinking that they could keep borrowing money, and there'd be no repercussions. Now someone's paying the repercussions, and they realize that. So I think they've turned the corner. The other thing is that, you know, you go to an island in Greece, it's still an island in Greece. Tourists are going to come here. I mean, the tourism industry has boomed during this economic downturn, so that's going to continue. It's Greece. The people are still Greeks. I mean, they're never beyond just saying, screw it, let's have a shot of ouzo and do some Greek dancing, no matter how bad things look. So that Greek spirit is not broken, yeah.
Yeah, it's that culture, thousands of years, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And like, I remember I went to Mykonos and Santorini with my girlfriend at the time, and yeah, it's just like, you know, parts of that island probably haven't changed in 5,000 years, right?
Yeah, and what did you think? I mean, it's
awesome.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it gets in you. It doesn't ever leave you when you go to Greece, yeah.
You said something about maybe the philosophers should be the politicians instead of kind of the way that it doesn't always work out that way. What did you mean by that, and will that ever happen?
Oh, that was Plato's take on things. You know, the thinkers should be running the world. And I think that it's going to take a while before we get there. I mean, Plato said it 2,500 years ago, right? Plato said in the Republic, you know, the worst thing we're facing right now is economic inequality. There's the rich and the poor. We got to solve this. That was 2,500 years ago. What are we talking about today? So until, I think, you know, people that are a little more enlightened are actually running things, it's going to be the same way.
Continue watching this fascinating conversation for free by clicking on the link below to visit our website, and I'll see you on the inside.
Things like this make me so nervous. I'm so nervous inside. And, you know, I just came from a place where I gave a talk to 200 people. and then there's a line of people signing books for 2 hours. It's terrifying to me.